Well, we have two ranked teams, Arizona and USC, and they're both looking to be Pac-12 South champions, and that's going to depend on this game.
Yeah, they're both looking to control their own destiny, and whoever wins this game, if they win out, they should win the Pac-12 South and have a pretty good shot at facing either a Washington State, or Stanford coming out of the North. And Arizona, early in the season, they did not look like a team that was even going to contend for a bowl game necessarily, let alone the Pac-12 South. But this hydra of a backfield that they have is getting better and better every week. They have 5 players on the team with over 50 rushing attempts, and that rushing attack is led by new starting quarterback Khalil Tate. He didn't start off the season, and he still isn't necessarily the most polished passer. He doesn't even have the most pass attempts of their quarterbacks on their team, but he has 926 rushing yards for 13.4 yards per carry and 8 rushing touchdowns on the season. And because of that, it's opened up a lot of opportunities for him in the passing game. He has 784 passing yards on just 46 completions and 67 attempts. He has 6 touchdowns, and he does have a little interception issue. He has 3 interceptions on the year, but his QBR is 187, which is one of the highest in all of college football, especially for any quarterback who has over 50 passes on the season. He really leads this hydra that is the Arizona backfield. They have 6 players with over 100 yards rushing on their team. If you cut off one head, they seem to grow 2 more. You can't focus in on just one player. They have a few key players on their team who seem to instigate their offense week in and week out. They're extremely diverse. They have 5 players who only have receiving touchdowns, meaning that they have 14 players on their team that have touchdowns. That's one of the highest we've seen just in general in college football this year. They spread the wealth. Everyone gets the ball. And they are a very high-powered offense thanks to Rich Rodriguez. It's one of his masterpieces, really, as a team that no one expected to do anything to be this almost juggernaut in the Pac-12 South. But they do have a decent run defense. And it's something that we've seen time in and time out. If you're able to run the ball on offense and stop the run on defense, their rush defense ranks towards the top in the entire Pac-12.
Well, and going back to that 186 quarterback rating, if we put that next to Sam Darnold's, he's at 144. That's a 40-point difference in the quarterback rating. But one thing Sam Darnold does have is he boasts the 24th passing offense in the nation, averaging 289 yards per game. Now, he's not the most accurate passer, and he could be better, but he has 2,558 passing yards at 63%. And that turnover problem he was having earlier in the season is starting to get better. He's decreased that ratio to 2-to-1 as opposed to 1-to-1 earlier this season. And I think that was only 3 weeks ago that we were seeing it around 1-to-1. The offense in general is just stellar as well. They're explosive. They average a total of 476 yards per game, putting them in 18th for overall offense. But then you have the strength and schedule. They're 18th for strength and schedule. They've played multiple top 25 teams, including Washington State, Stanford, and Notre Dame.
USC, still, they have a lot of turnover issues, and they aren't all Sam Darnold's fault. They also have 10 fumbles on the season. Just to add on top of Sam Darnold's 10 interceptions on the season, those 20 turnovers ranks 121st in the country, which puts them behind teams like Kansas and Baylor, which are just 2 teams that are absolutely horrible. And every time you're mentioned in the same sentence as one of them, you know it's not a good thing. This is a team, they have a lot of failed expectations. Coming into the year, everyone expected them to go undefeated. They expected them to win the Pac-12. They expected them to go to the college football playoff, and that's just not the case. That rush defense. They allowed 377 yards on the ground to Notre Dame. That's just unacceptable. Against this Arizona team that, their quarterback can run. They have multiple running backs. They have receivers who can run. If you can't stop the run against them, you have no chance at stopping their offense, period. There's going to be a lot of big explosive plays on both sides of the ball. Neither one of these teams are necessarily known for their defense. And USC, they also have a lot of injuries. They have 20 injuries this week alone. Injuries are really piling up, and USC, while 20 sounds like a lot, that's better than it's been in weeks past when they've had 24, 25, 26 possible injuries, and they only have 6 of those guys who are questionable to return for this game.
Now, a lot of Arizona's weaknesses happen on the defensive side of the ball. They allow their opponents to gain nearly twice as many yards as through the air as they do. And although Darnold's play calling hasn't been the best this year, it is improving and leaving a slim window open for a lacking secondary that somehow has been able to grab 14 interceptions. While the rushing defense is much better, the Wildcats cannot afford to give up 453 yards to USC if they want to win this game. And then you have the scoring defense. On average, they give up 30.3 points per game for 88th in the nation, rounding the back of the pack. And although I'm only listing 2 weaknesses for Arizona, these are critical weaknesses that, if they do not address, will hinder their performance this week.
They have a few good players on defense, but as a team, Rich Rodriguez is an offensive mind. He's not a defensive-oriented coach, and you've seen that in teams that he's coached before. You've seen that at Arizona in the past. My key player is on defense for Arizona, though. His name is Jace Whitaker. He has 9 deflected passes. He's one of the top corners in all of college football this year. He has 3 interceptions. He's pretty athletic. He returns those for 23 yards. You know, a lot of people have even asked why they don't put him on kickoff returns because of how good he is at returning his interceptions. He puts a lot of opposing teams' quarterbacks in compromising situations, and it's something that, Sam Darnold's really going to have to look out for. Whitaker's already has 3 interceptions on the year, and if Darnold looks to continue his trend of over 1 interception per game, he's probably going to get at least 1, if not 2 more in this game. I expect him to have a huge game shutting down at least one of the USC's receivers.
Well, luckily, if Darnold does have trouble getting past Jace, he does have some relief in the backfield, and that comes in Ronald Jones II. He has 888 rushing yards for a total of 10 touchdowns. Now, he's no Bryce Love, but he does average about 111 rushing yards per game. But when USC does decide to pass, he even does his best to get open downfield, gaining an additional 114 yards on offense for an additional touchdown to his name.
Yeah, he's really helped round out this entire offense and put a lot of linebackers specifically in those compromising situations that they're not used to, going downfield in coverage, being in that secondary instead of just those short to intermediate passes that they're taught to defend. Who do you think's going to win this week, Janae?
This is a tough game, and when I like to pick against USC, they typically win, but I think I'm going to have to stick with USC. Arizona doesn't have the defense. USC has defense that can stop this Arizona team. And I think the secondary on Arizona is really going to struggle this week against Sam Darnold. Yes, he's been prone to making mistakes, but he's cleaning it up and he's doing better, and we're starting to see the old Sam Darnold that everyone knew.
Yeah, growing up, there were 2 teams that I was always taught to never root for. One of them is the University of Washington Huskies, and the other one was the University of Southern California. It's just one of those teams that even if it looks like they're going to win, I can't force myself to root for them, and I can't force myself to tell you that they're going to win. I think Arizona's going to win. I think Khalil Tate's going to have another huge rushing output. I expect him to possibly even break into that top 5 for the Heisman conversation after another huge performance against USC. But I just expect Arizona's offense, that rushing attack specifically, to be almost like what Notre Dame was a few weeks ago when they completely blew USC out of the water.
Well, if you enjoyed this game preview, we have 4 other top 25 matchups for Week 10. They're along the right side of your screen. Be sure to check them out. I'm Janae Muchmore.
And I'm Griffin Parkrose.
Thanks for watching RedZone to EndZone, and have a great weekend.